Hello, everyone, and welcome back. My name is Dewayne. I got a video for that Kimble, United States Army veteran and retired VA rating specialist. I'm joined today by David Piatek with VA Housing Education. How you doing today, David?
I'm doing great. It's warm here and in Tampa, so everyone, at least on this side, is happy. So thanks for
Yeah.
having me on again. Appreciate it.
Hey, no problem. I see you got a little tan there. I was like, man, he looks a little bit tanner than back in January.
Well,
So
yeah, of course I'm gonna be 10. I'm cutting grass now. I'm actually do some work around the house. So
yeah, okay. All right, everyone. David and I, we've been going live next month and make it 2 years, David.
yeah.
It's going this 2 years that went by pretty quick. He has a YouTube channel, VA Housing Education. Make sure you go over there and subscribe. And also, before we get into today's topic, make sure you like, subscribe, and hit that notification button so the YouTube algorithm can push this to other veterans. So, what we're going to be talking about VA reduction and can that impact your VA home loan if you have one or if you are trying to obtain a loan. So, David, I'll kick it off. I got a couple of upcoming videos
Okay.
where I'm talking about VA reductions. And a lot of veterans, and this is, especially if you're already service connected, things that you need to be doing before you even file that claim. And a lot of veterans, they don't do any research, they don't get educated, and they put their claim in. Let's say, for example, an increase, that's when it normally happens, and they don't understand exactly what an increase is or if they even qualify for the next higher percentage. They get a letter from the VA saying, hey, we are proposing to reduce you from 100%, 90% down to 20 or 30%. I got
Wow.
asked a question from a veteran, and he says, hey, Dewayne, the VA is proposing to reduce me. I have a VA home loan. Will they look at that and put my house in the foreclosure? And I'm thinking, I know in one video we talked about home loan guarantee. So
Right.
I ask you, and what then I'll get into that reduction, but I'll ask you, like, okay, so a veteran is, let's say, 90%. They're getting, I don't know, I think that's 29, 3 grand a month, 2,900 a month. And they're proposing to reduce down to maybe like 60. So they're going to go from, almost 3 grand down to maybe 19 or 2,000. I'd never heard of VBA, the compensation piece, calling home loan guarantee or mortgager that guaranteed that VA home loan. Say, hey, the veteran, we're proposing the veteran, you might want to look at that loan. That I
Yeah, and
haven't heard. Go ahead. I'm
that's a
sorry.
good question because they don't talk to each other from that perspective. But it is a valid concern because you're losing a portion of your income. So there's really a couple big things that factor into that. So one, VA disability is a form of income. Now, for different people, it's different scenarios, right? They use VA disability income to cover their mortgage payment, and then they have a regular job that then pays for other things. You have other people that rely 100% on VA disability as their sole income. So that also changes the situation, right? And
Mhm.
as we know, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong because you're the VA disability expert, but if you're not 100% PNT, the chances of getting reduced are greater than having 100% PNT. Am I good on that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
So if you don't have the 100% PNT, you're subject to change. That's number one. So that's with like the housing piece, right? You can use it as income. So if you have less income, you qualify for less when you're going through the home buying process. Now, the opposite happens in a way when you already own a home and you rely on that income. Now you have less income. Now you could be in financial trouble. Okay. So
Yeah.
you have to be careful. The other part that it affects people, and I've seen this happen, the exact scenario, Dwayne, 100%. And this veteran was 100% permanent in total, and they decreased them because they inaccurately rated him. Uh, and so that was wild. And it's like somebody I know. So he's like, oh, I'm 100% permanent in total. They qualify for the property tax exemption, right? And that was like $800 a month. And then
Mhm.
they got this pay bump. Now the VA sent him a letter a couple months later saying, "Hey, you don't qualify anymore for that." They lost their rating, they lost their tax exemption, and now they had a reduction in income. So you could put yourself in a financial bind if that happens. The VA itself, if like you're making all your payments on time, they're not going to be like, "Oh, hey, like a commercial loan reviews your finances every year to be like, can they really review? Can they really make the payments? Oh, we're starting to see financial trouble, so we're going to go ahead and foreclose on the property." Whole different set of rules on the consumer side and getting a VA loan. They don't do that. The only time something can come up is like if you start defaulting on your VA home loan, which happens to people.
Mhm.
Before they had the VASP program, and now they have the House Bill, I think it's 1815 or something like that. Don't quote me on
Mhm.
that, but I just did a video on it. Like the VASP replacement program, it's not finalized, right? So veterans right now are in this weird spot that if they do come across financial difficulty, they're having a hard time getting some kind of a solution. And if you check out the channel, I just did a video on it because they try to put you in these 40-year mortgages, which I think
Ooh.
are absolute scam. And Dwayne, it's wild because you end up like for the $30,000 that you're behind on payments, you end up paying back like an extra 300,000 in interest. It is so crazy that they can even do this. But most veterans that are facing that do have equity in their property. And I just did a whole video on like talking about what's going on with the housing market. But yeah, so like you those so it kind of gets split down the middle on that part. One, again, just to kind of reiterate, income part, you could gain income or lose income, which
Mhm.
affects affordability both for pre-buying and then you own a home. Now what happens? And then you have your property tax exemption, and how that works. Can you up now apply because you have that property tax exemption, or does it get taken away because of that? And if you have a 0% disability rating, that's really not going to help you from a VA home loan perspective. If you get increased to 10%, for that perspective, if you have a 10% or greater VA disability rating, you don't pay what's called the VA funding fee.
Fee.
Yeah. And so, for some people, because, thanks to folks like yourself, like that's how we met. I was doing research on VA disability. I'm like, let me hit up Dwayne on LinkedIn. And that's how we connected.
Yep.
And, now I'm a big advocate, or I was, but now I have more knowledge, right? To be like, oh, why don't you file? And people are like, oh, nothing's wrong with me. I'm like, I'm sure there's something wrong with you. Ask your wife. But
Right. Yeah.
but what that happens is that you can file before you buy a home. At least you file to intent, right? You buy the house, you're 9 months later, you file your disability. Another 2 years later, you finally get your rating. It doesn't really take that long, but I'm just using worst case scenario. So 3 years later, right? You finally get your rating. They backdate it to before you bought the home. Then you can ask the VA for a refund of that VA funding fee. So those are all things to kind of consider. But definitely having a reduction can be life changing. And the opposite, having an increase can be life changing.
Right.
But just be really careful with that. And I know you talk about poking the bear, like you
Yeah.
have your rating. Like if you have 90, let's say you have a 100% TDIU, do you try to go in for the 100% PNT? Because I meet a lot of folks, Dwayne, that um, want to work, right, but they're at the 100% TDIU. And
Right.
so they kind of face those challenges, and all of that's factored into kind of what happens. But the positive part is that the healthcare doesn't talk to the VA loan people and says, hey, you need to be on the lookout for these people. They're on the reduced list. So that doesn't
Right.
happen. So yeah, so
Right.
that's a
Right.
good. And Dwayne, do you know if there's data out there on how many veterans get reduced annually?
I don't initially I would say no, but that's not a hard no. The VA, they have these, I don't know if they still call them morning reports.
Mhm.
They do have reports on their website, but I've reviewed some of that information and I'm like, I have to trust that the VA is telling the truth, right?
Yeah.
So is it, it was no, if it was something on there, I don't know if I could, I wouldn't even do a YouTube video on it because I'm like, how can I fact check that? You know what I mean?
Right.
But out of the reports that I did see, I don't recall any where it talks about the reductions. But with that being said, when you were talking, and I was going to get into a little bit to reduction, so this is just a nugget before I do that. I've never been asked this particular question. So I'm gonna tell you what this question is. And I want you to let me know if you've ever been asked this question. While you were talking, I thought of something. I've never been asked, Dwayne, I'm thinking about purchasing a home and using my VA home loan, but I'm 60% and I feel I meet the 100%, criteria, to get P&T.
Yeah.
Should I file a claim to try and increase my income by increasing the overall percentage while I'm trying to buy a home? And what I was thinking about when I heard you talk, when we were talking about you can go up and you can go the opposite way. So I've never been asked that. Like, so let me do an intent to file. Let me get in. I'm going to apply for a VA home loan at the same time. And then you get that decision, and you're at 60%, and you use that income, and now you've been proposed to reduce to 30%. Have you ever been asked that question? Like, should I file a VA home? Because I never,
Well,
I just thought about it when you were talking. I'm like, you know what? I've never been asked that question.
well, you know what, Dwayne? Because people that watch your channel reach out, right? And they're like, "Hey, love Dwayne." So shout out to Dwayne for that. To help me get to where I need to be. And I haven't heard anybody uh, that I've talked to say I've been reduced. Most of the time, it's the opposite. What you said, like I'm buying a home, and they'll talk with me, and they're like, "I'm waiting for my VA disability to be increased to become a homeowner."
Okay.
Everyone's financial situation is different. Some people when they talk to, they're like, "I'm not ready." And I look at their finances, they're like, "You're more than ready
Yeah.
by a lot of people." And they're like, "Really?" And I break it down. They're like, "Yeah, I didn't even realize that. So I was putting things on hold when I shouldn't have." And again, missed opportunities, million things that go into that. But yeah, Dwayne, there's definitely people out there that are holding off until they get that increase normally or a rating so they don't have to pay the VA funding fee. But yeah, to your point, like yeah, that decrease, man, that's
In the middle of a home
a
loan
whole
application,
right,
that could
because
be detrimental.
that can derail things for sure,
Yeah.
because it is considered income, and if you don't need that income, that's one thing. But if you're
Right.
relying on that income to qualify, okay, well, that's definitely gonna have an impact. And again, it can have a positive impact while you're going through it. If you get an increase, a decrease, if you rely on it, also impact. But if you don't
Mhm.
need it, no impact. Just emotionally, you're gonna be hurt for sure. Because I
Right.
mean, that's gonna change things for you.
But the number one thing to put everything to bed that we just talked about when it comes to reductions, I did some of those ratings before, and let me tell you, they were painful to do. I've actually reduced veterans from 100 down to 0%. Not because, and I know I'm going to get a lot of slack, and they be like, "You're part of the problem." No,
You're the system,
you're right.
Dwayne.
If I didn't do it and quality pulled it, I could lose my job.
Yeah.
So my videos are giving, and I have a couple of videos coming up where I'm talking about reduction. So I don't want to spoil it for people, but veterans need to understand. I will say this: the times that I saw veterans get reduced, majority of the time, you gave an example, and it sounded like the veteran was 100% PNT. Could have been a CUE, and it got pulled by the quality department. Okay,
It was a quality for sure, because 'cause they're like, "Oh, I saw the letter." He's like, they went
yeah,
from 70 to the hundo and then back down
right,
after his exams. So I was just like, "Man, this is kinda weird." But yeah.
right. So when I saw veterans get reduced, or when I actually had to reduce veterans, they were applying for TDIU because they didn't understand TDIU is not a standalone claim. And two, when they claimed an increase. So when you do an increase, you're telling them, hey, I have this condition that you all service connected me for, and it's gotten worse. So in their mind, they're like, I have more pain. What they don't realize is they don't go to that rating scheduler. I got it sitting back there, my old one back there, and look at the criteria for the next higher percentage to see if they meet that criteria and if they have evidence to support it. And they drop that claim. And then they don't look at or think about, oh, wait a minute. I'm service connected for PTSD at 50%. How long has that 50% been in effect? Because if you go to that exam and that 50% has been in effect less than 5 years, proposal to reduce if it changes the overall percentage.
Wow.
If it's been in effect more than 5 years, then they need 2 exams to show improvement. So I got a video where I'm talking about that in detail. So it's little things like that, and I call them nuggets because you have to understand it, especially if you're filing for TDIU increase, and then you know what you need to say when you go to that CMP exam. So you're not talking about the 10% criteria, you're talking about the 70% criteria, if that's the criteria for that particular percentage you feel that you meet. So it all goes hand in hand in what we were talking about. If you're trying to buy a home and you need that income to help cover that, what do they call it, credit debt ratio? What is it?
Debt
Yeah,
to income ratio,
yeah,
or
debt to
even
income,
just
right?
having residual requirements. Like, yeah, so it's all small stuff. And that's why you should check out the channel, VA Housing Education. Subscribe, because there's always updates that we're doing on little nuggets
Yeah,
that you just don't think about when you're going through that process.
right. And I would hate for anybody, veteran or not, to go because my wife had a friend one time and got qualified, pre-qualified, going through the process, and about 2 weeks before they went to close it, well, I think it was before then, like a day or 2 before closing or something, they went out and bought, like, all this furniture to furnish the whole house. They pulled another credit report. And they didn't find out until they walked into the title office.
Oh yeah, it happens because it's called a soft credit check, and
Yeah,
that's why we tell people, don't do
yeah.
anything without talking to me.
Yeah. So veterans just understand, if you are thinking about getting a home, buying a home, and you're doing that claim, initiating a claim at the same time, talk to somebody that knows the process so you understand. Um, but if you're 60 70%, and that's enough for you to get that home, you know, and like you said something earlier, intent to file, you do the intent to file and then close, and then you can go and do the claim. But again, like you said, David, talk to somebody before you initiate something so you don't be that person, you get the phone call from the title company or you get yourself in a bind. So, Dave, I give you last words before we get up out of here today. Any thing else out there that
Yeah,
veterans need to know?
I just tell you that don't deny yourself. Reach out to me, because too many times, Dwayne, we've talked to people where they've been like, I don't think I could do it. I'm going to wait. And then they end up being able to do it. Historically, if you look at home prices, they go up, right? So when
Yep.
people are like, I'm holding out. Yeah. There could be a chance that housing markets shift downwards, but uh, you want to just look at it realistically, because everyone's situation is different. It's whatever. It's not what the housing, forget what the housing market's doing. What are you doing? Right? Is it the right time for you? Are you financially where you need to be? That's
Yeah.
what you got to ask yourself. So, Dwayne, I really appreciate being on again. Yeah, I'm 2 years. We still need
Yeah.
to do our 4 hour event, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. We've been saying that for 6 months. We'll get to it, I'm sure. All right, everyone. Again, make sure you like, subscribe, hit that notification button, and make sure you go over to David Piatek's channel, VA Housing Education, subscribe, and check out his videos. Good night, everyone.